Chapter 15. Sunday afternoon. Tony didn't realize how tightly he was gripping the phone receiver. When he slammed it down, his hand was tingling. His palm began to itch. He scratched it hard with the fingernails of his other hand, scratching faster and faster until the skin was red and raw, but the itching didn't go away. The back of his neck felt cold and wet. He realized his legs were trembling. Still scratching his palm, he plopped down on the living room couch, threw his head back against one arm, and stared up at the ceiling. So Brian had talked. Well, big surprise. Lately, Tony had suspected that Brian might talk. He was the weakest one. Ellen's return, the plans for the party would be a perfect excuse for Brian to let go and spill his guts. That's why Tony had done everything he could to make sure Brian wouldn't talk. Hadn't he taken Brian out to the Fear Street woods and beaten him up as a reminder not to talk? But he had talked anyway. He squealed. That's the word they always use in gangster movies on TV. Brian squealed. And now Meg knew. Meg knew that Tony killed Evan. Brian had told her. Tony uttered a loud cry, a moan of regret, of pain, of anger, and slammed his fist into the sofa cushion. What was he going to do now? Meg knew. Meg knew about last year. Once again, Tony saw himself in those dreaded woods, saw Ellen, saw Evan. Once again, he felt the hunting rifle in his hands, Evan's rifle. Once again, they struggled for control of it, screaming at each other, pulling with all their strength, out of control, out of all reason, pulling. And then the gun went off, just a loud pop, like a firecracker almost, and Evan fell. Tony had killed Evan, and Ellen was screaming. In the background the whole time, Ellen was screaming, like a wailing siren, like a broken alarm. She was sitting on a fallen tree, pulling the sides of her straight blonde hair with both hands, as if holding on to herself, and screaming, her eyes frozen open, staring straight ahead at Tony, staring at the boy who had just killed Evan. But Tony hadn't meant to shoot Evan. Or had he? That's what he couldn't decide. What was he thinking at the moment? Was he thinking that he wanted to kill his friend, Ellen's boyfriend? Was he thinking that he had to kill him? No, it was an accident. It was just an accident. They struggled. The gun went off. Because Tony had wanted it to go off. No. Tony wanted Evan dead. No. These thoughts are going to drive him crazy. Maybe he already was crazy. What was he going to do now? What was he going to do about Meg? He didn't have a choice, did he? Meg wanted to talk to him. She didn't want to believe all that Brian had told her. That was so much like Meg. She wanted Tony to tell her that it wasn't all true, that everything was going to be just fine. If I deny it, she'll believe me, he thought. But that wasn't the answer. There was still Brian, and there was still Ellen. Ellen could talk. Ellen could give him away, just as Brian had. Maybe I shouldn't have beaten Brian up, he told himself, his mind going back a few nights ago to the woods, pictures of their fight in the darkness repeating behind his closed eyelids, pictures accompanied by the sound of his fist pounding Brian's chest, his shoulders, his stomach, and then his face. Brian had told anyway. Despite Tony's fierce warning, after nearly a year of keeping the secret, Brian had told. And now what was Tony supposed to do about Meg? Didn't Brian realize the danger he was putting Meg in by telling her how Evan had been murdered? No, of course not. Brian wouldn't think of that. What to do about Meg? He couldn't let her turn him in. He couldn't let her tell everyone that he was a murderer. His life would be ruined. Over. All over. He couldn't allow that. She wouldn't keep his secret. She was such a straight arrow. There was no way he could trust her to keep the secret. But he couldn't kill Meg, too, could he? No, he said aloud. He sat up. Maybe if he sat up, the ringing in his ears would go away. Maybe his palm would stop itching. He couldn't kill her, but he had to kill her. He had to push her off the river ridge. It was Brian's fault. Brian left Tony no choice at all. Now it was either Meg or him, and it wasn't going to be him. It was going to be Meg. One push and his secret would be safe. One push. And what an excellent warning that would be to Ellen and to Brian, not to say another word. They'd get the message okay. They'd understand that they'd be next. But wait, this was Meg. Meg. He loved Meg, didn't he? He cared so much about Meg. Could he really be thinking of killing her? Could he really do it, just push her over the ridge? Was he really a cold-blooded killer? No. Maybe. Meg had sounded so worried on the phone, so horrified, but not horrified enough. How could she be so trusting? How could she agree to go with him to River Ridge? She was just such a trusting, naive person. She was stupid. No, maybe she really didn't believe Brian. Maybe Brian told her, and she refused to believe it. Why should she believe Brian anyway? Everyone knew he was weird and crazy, out in the woods all the time playing that stupid game with Dwayne. I don't have a choice, he decided. I have to kill poor Meg. Let me count the reasons. 1. She knows too much. 2. It will be a warning to Ellen and Brian. 3. If Meg is dead, the surprise party will be cancelled. No, I can't. Not Meg. Not Meg. But I have to. I already killed Evan, my best friend. I can kill Meg, too. Sorry, Meg. You understand, don't you? Of course you do. You're always so understanding. Chapter 16. Monday afternoon. So, you didn't call the police after the car tried to run you down? No, maybe I should have, but I didn't, Meg said. I mean, what could I tell them? I didn't even get a good look at the car. It was too dark. All I saw was headlights. But Meg, Shannon started. Besides, now I'm not even that sure it was trying to run me down. I mean, the road was real slippery because of the rain. Maybe the driver just lost control for a second. If I call the police, they won't be able to do anything. It'll just be a waste of time. But what about the guy who grabbed you in the woods? Same thing, Meg said. I didn't see him or anything. There's nothing helpful I can tell the police. Don't look at me like that, Shannon. I really think calling the police would be a waste of time. Shannon shrugged. Whatever. They looked up at Ellen's aunt's house. It was bright yellow with freshly painted white shutters. The front lawn sloped up sharply. To get to the house, the girls would have to climb about 100 flagstone steps built into the sloping grass. We should have brought mountain climbing gear, Shannon complained, motioning for Megan to go first. And to St. Bernard? She followed Meg up the crooked stairs. You want to go to David Metcalf's party tonight? He's having an end-of-school party because his parents are out of town. Yeah, I know, Meg said. I'm meeting Tony there. We can go together. Pass the oxygen, please. They were halfway up the hill. Gee, it'll be great to see Ellen again, Shannon said. Of course, we'll be too winded from the climb to talk to her. We can just make hand signals. She looked great, Meg said, suddenly feeling nervous about seeing her old friend. Shannon was staring straight up. Meg followed Shannon's gaze and discovered that Ellen was standing at the top of the slope, waving down at them. Hi! Hi! Hurry up! Throw us a rope? Ellen was wearing a sleeveless wine-colored t-shirt and white tennis shorts that emphasized her long legs. Her hair seemed even lighter, almost silvery in the sun. At the top of the hill, a lot of hugs were exchanged, and everyone commented with high-pitched delight on how everyone hadn't changed a bit, and how wonderful everyone looked, and how great it was to be together again. Shall we go in? Ellen asked. My aunt is out shopping, and... Let's stay out here. It's so pretty, Meg said, plopping down on the grass. I love being able to look down on the street from high up. It doesn't take much to get Meg excited, Shannon cracked. She sat down on the top flagstone, straightening her blue top. So, how are you? Ellen asked, grinning at them both, her hair glowing in the sunlight. She took a seat between them and squeezed Meg's hand. Fine. Okay. How about you? Yeah, good, real good, Ellen said. She giggled, a high-pitched giggle. Meg recognized it as her nervous giggle. When she was really tense, Meg knew. Ellen would end every sentence with that little jingle of a giggle. They looked down the hill as a boy rode by on his bike. We were doing fine when we were standing up, Meg thought. Now it's gotten awkward. Come on, please. Somebody think of something to say. How's your new school? Shannon asked Ellen. Ellen put her hands behind her in the grass and leaned back on them. It's okay, I guess. It's big. Much bigger than Shadyside. Sometimes I feel kinda lost. The giggle again. They stared down the hill. What's happening at Shadyside? Ellen asked, her fixed grin finally fading. Not much, Shannon said. Mind's Meg went blank. She couldn't think of anything interesting to tell Ellen. It's been a whole year, she thought. There must be something. A few new teachers, she said. How lame. Corey Brooks and Lisa Bloom are going together, Shannon said. You're kidding! Ellen reacted with a little too much surprise, Meg thought. It wasn't that shocking after all. That's amazing, Ellen added, followed by her nervous giggle. You going with anybody? Meg blurted out. She could feel her face getting red. Sure, it was a normal question to ask someone, but not Ellen. Not after her last boyfriend shot himself to death in the woods. You're being too sensitive. That was a year ago, she scolded herself. Ellen did look uncomfortable. No, she said quickly, putting her grin back on her face. I haven't really met anyone that I like that much. I mean, I've gone out a few times, but... She made a face. Stooky Thomas got caught shoplifting, Shannon said, changing the subject. Big surprise, Ellen said, shaking her head. It was pretty serious, Meg said. She has to see a probation officer and everything. That's probably made her even more popular with the boys, Ellen said. Right? Yeah, she's real popular, Meg said. That's because she'll do it with any boy who asks her, Shannon said. Ellen laughed. You still know how to cut to the nitty-gritty, Shannon. A green flower delivery truck rolled by down below. A small cloud drifted over the sun, casting a shadow on a grassy hill. The three girls stared at the truck, each of them trying to think of something to say next. There are so many things I want to ask you, Meg told Ellen, but it's been so long it's sort of hard to know where to start. Ellen and Shannon quickly agreed, as if that explained away their awkwardness, their inability to talk freely and easily the way they always had. You still going with Tony? Ellen asked, not looking at Meg. Yeah, Meg said, feeling herself blush again. Why did she feel so uncomfortable about that? We're still together. Tony's had sort of a rough time, though. Ellen shifted her position on the grass. Tell me about it. Bitterness creeping into her voice. She pulled out a wide blade of grass and began sucking on it, her eyes narrowing as the sun reappeared. It's pretty here, Shannon said. Yes, very, Meg quickly agreed. This is horrible, she thought. Why can't we talk about anything? Shadyside seems so much smaller to me now, Ellen said, yawning. Oh, sorry. I stayed up till 2 watching a movie on cable. Do you believe we don't have cable at home? How can you live without cable? Shannon asked, brightening. Ellen shrugged. I took my aunt's car and we went driving around. Everything looked the same, only smaller. It takes less than half an hour to drive everywhere. Yeah, Meg said. Shadyside isn't exactly your major metropolis. What a stupid and boring thing to say, she thought. You been playing any tennis? Shannon asked. Ellen didn't seem to hear her. I miss our Saturday morning games, Shannon said. Remember the games we used to play when we were kids? Meg asked. How lame, she thought. When in doubt, start talking about when you were kids. Yeah, remember shadow chasing? Shannon said, a bit too eagerly. She was obviously pleased to have something safe to talk about. What a dumb game that was. That wasn't our dumbest game, Ellen said, laughing. Our dumbest game was Eek a Mouse. I'd forgotten all about that one, Meg cried. It was just a screaming contest, right? We'd pretend we saw a mouse and then see who could make the most terrifying, earth-shattering scream? That was a great game, Shannon said. We should play it right now. Bet I'd win. Bet you wouldn't, Ellen said. But they didn't play the dumb kids game. They fumbled around, trying to think of other things to talk about for a while. Meg felt more and more awkward. She knew that the other two felt the same, which made her feel even worse. A gray station wagon started to pull to the curb down at the bottom of the sloping yard. That's Aunt Amy, Ellen said, climbing quickly to her feet and brushing off the back of her tennis shorts. I'd better go help her with the groceries. She seemed grateful for the interruption. Guess we'd better get going, Shannon said, sounding dejected and not hiding it at all. You're, still coming out for pizza with us Saturday night, right? Meg asked, trying to sound casual. Saturday night, of course, was a surprise party. Going out for pizza was the excuse Meg and Shannon had dreamed up to get Ellen to go to the party. Yeah, right. Great, Ellen said with forced enthusiasm. See ya. See ya, Ellen. You look great. Meg and Shannon descended the flagstone steps quickly in silence. They didn't say a word to each other until they were inside Shannon's red Mazda. Wow, that was just like old times, Shannon said sarcastically. Meg felt so bad she thought she might cry, but she took a deep breath and held it in. The visit was so awful, she thought. It was like losing a friend all over again. We didn't have much to say to one another, she said tentatively. She wasn't sure how Shannon felt about it, but maybe if she talked about how she felt with Shannon, she wouldn't feel so hurt, so abandoned. Well, I guess it's natural, Shannon said. Her way of dealing with situations like this was to minimize them, act as if they were ordinary, normal, to be expected. I felt so bad, Meg cried, struggling to keep herself together. It was a little awkward, Shannon admitted, her eyes on the road. But we haven't seen her for a whole year. Come on, Shannon, admit it, Meg pleaded, shoving the seatbelt out of the way so she could lean her arms on the dashboard and rest her head on her arms. It was dreadful. We were all totally tongue-tied and miserable. Ah, Meg, stop exaggerating, Shannon scolded. It wasn't all that bad, really. We were all nervous, but we'll get over it, and so will Ellen. I'm sure it'll go better at the party. The party, Meg wailed. What a disaster. Why did I ever think it was a good idea? Oh, it's going to be a nightmare. Whoever's been trying to stop it was right. Meg, you think Ellen's going to be happy to be dragged to a party to see all her old friends? Shannon, she wasn't even happy to see us. Meg, chill out, please. You're blowing this all out of proportion. Just because we were a little nervous this afternoon doesn't mean Ellen won't like the party. It'll be completely different. We'll be different, and she'll be different. You'll see, it'll be fine. Meg just moaned with her head buried in her arms. Shannon stopped the car. Why are you stopping? Meg cried. Because you're home, Shannon said, laughing. Get out. See you at David's party tonight? Meg muttered some kind of goodbye and ran into the house, thinking about David's party. She realized she was really looking forward to being with Tony. It had been so long since they'd been together, just the two of them, and they had so much to talk about. Maybe, she thought, Tony had some idea of what Brian was trying to tell her, of why Brian was threatening her. She couldn't wait to tell Tony her suspicions about Brian. Maybe Tony would be able to help her understand what was going on. Chapter 17. Monday night. Bet you'd never guess that David's parents are away, Shannon said, rolling her eyes. What a scene, Meg said, staring out through the windshield as Shannon parked the car across from David's house. Stereo speakers on the driveway were blaring out dance music, and couples were dancing in the garage. Kids were sprawled all over the lawn. 2 couples were making out on the steps leading up to the front porch. Another couple was entwined under the tree at the side of the driveway. All of the lights in the house were on. There seemed to be even more kids inside. Shannon climbed out of the car and slammed the door. She was wearing skin-tight white pants and a silky wild pink top. Some guy sitting on the lawn whistled to her and called out, "Looking good, Shannon." This clever remark was followed by loud, appreciative laughter from the other guys on the lawn. Maybe we should have Ellen's party on David's front lawn, too, Shannon joked. This looks pretty rad. Let's go in the house, Meg said. Glad we got here early before everyone starts throwing up, Shannon said. Walking up the drive, Meg looked for Tony, even though she knew he wouldn't be there this early. Think fast, someone yelled. A basketball flew by their heads and bounced down the drive and into the street. The guys on the lawn thought that was hilarious. Where's David? Shannon asked a kid they knew. He shrugged. Haven't seen him all night. How'd you do in the English final? It was Shannon's turn to shrug. Meg led the way past the couples on the front steps into the living room. The room was filled with kids from school milling about, talking and laughing. Arnie Tobin, David's friend from the gymnastics team, seems to be asleep on the couch, probably passed out. This is really gross, Shannon complained. I love it. Hey, there's Lisa, Meg cried. She waved to Lisa, who was talking to some kids by the entrance to the dining room. Hey, Shannon, you didn't have to dress up just for me. Meg turned around to see who that was. It was Dwayne, a beer can in his hand, a smile on his face, as he walked up to Shannon, his dark eyes looking her up and down. He walked up very close, forcing her to take a few steps back. I see you dressed up too, Shannon cracked. Dwayne was wearing a gray t-shirt, torn above one sleeve, brown stains down the front, and faded jeans with one front pocket torn off. He stepped closer and leered down at her. He was about a foot taller than she was. You come inside to dance with me, huh? Yeah, sure, I've been dreaming about it all week, Shannon said sarcastically. Shall we do our dancing vertically or horizontally, he asked, and gave a dirty laugh at his own joke. Dwayne, such big words for you, Shannon said. Have you been going to night school or something? The smile faded from his face. His eyes went cold. I don't like jokes like that. I'm not dumb, you know. He grabbed her arm. Hey, let go of me. She pulled away from him. He laughed. You're not scared of me, are you? No, I'm not scared of garden slugs either. I just don't want them touching me. His face reddened as his eyes narrowed. Give me a break, okay? I just want to dance with you. I'm not a bad guy, Shannon. He was moving forward, backing her into a corner. Let's get to know each other, he said, his smile returning. He wasn't looking at her face. He was staring at her tight blouse. You'll see. I'm okay. Really. Dwayne, please? If we get along tonight, we can have an even better time at the surprise party Saturday night. What? What are you talking about, Dwayne? You weren't invited to that party? Shannon shouted. I was too. Suki Thomas asked me to go as her date. Shannon's back was against the wall. Dwayne took a long sip from his can and moved closer. Dwayne, don't come any closer. I don't want to dance with you. I mean it. Don't knock it if you haven't tried it, Dwayne said with a leer. Meg decided she better do something. Hey, Shannon, Tony wants to see you, she called. It was the first thing that came into her head. She ran over and tugged Shannon away. He's in the kitchen. He wants to ask you something. Dwayne shot Meg an angry look. Tony, you mean lunch meat. Lunch meat is here. Isn't this past a little boy's bedtime? Meg ignored him and pulled Shannon out of the corner. He started to follow. Shannon turned and flashed him a withering look. He tossed up his hands. Ooh, the evil eye. He laughed. Okay, I can take a hint. Thanks for the dance. See you at the party. He tossed his empty can onto the couch. It bounced off the sleeping Arnie's stomach and rolled to the carpet. Arnie didn't stir. Thanks for the help, but I know how to handle that creep, Shannon told Meg. Just hit his nose with a rolled-up newspaper. He's so big, he's kind of scary, Meg said. I'm going in the dining room. There seems to be tons of food in there, Shannon said. You coming? No, I think I'll... Oh, here's Tony. Tony stood at the front door, wearing straight-legged jeans and a gray leather jacket. Hi, Tony. Bye, Tony, Shannon said. She disappeared into the dining room. Meg ran over to Tony. She was really glad to see him. Hi, stranger, she said, taking his hand. His hand was ice cold. Great party, he said, looking around. Where's David? They both saw David at the same time. He and Corey appeared in the entrance to the den, walking on their hands for some reason, their feet straight up in the air. Suddenly, all the change fell out of Corey's chino's pocket, and both boys collapsed to the floor laughing. Let's go, Tony said, pulling her toward the door. You just got here. Don't you want to talk with anyone? No, just you, he said. Let's go where we can be alone. He smiled at her. He seemed nervous, she thought, and very pale. A few minutes later, they were in his dad's car, driving north on the river road, heading toward River Ridge. The weather had grown cool again, and the wind gusted off the river. Meg was wearing layers of t-shirts, but she wished she had brought a jacket. It's so dark up here, she said, snuggling close to him as he drove. Yeah, there aren't many lights on the river road, he replied, staring straight ahead. The road grew steep as it climbed toward the high ridge at the spot where the river split in two. River Ridge was actually a trail originally made by Indians. It started low on the eastern banks of the Kananoka and followed the river, sloping up until it looked down on the water from tall granite cliffs. The farthest and highest point of River Ridge was known as Lover's Leap. The ridge was a romantic place to walk, especially on warm spring and summer nights, but no one really knew why that spot was called Lover's Leap. They drove in silence for a long while. You're very quiet tonight, Meg said finally. I'm just happy to be with you, he told her. His voice sounded strange to her, tight and tense. Or was she just imagining it because she was the tense one? Near the top of the road, he pulled the car over and parked it between two trees. He switched off the ignition and the headlights. Let's take a walk, he said. I don't have a jacket, she said, already feeling a little chilled. Can I borrow yours? He hesitated. Come on, he urged softly. I'll keep you warm. She got out of the car and followed him onto the path. She could hear the river flowing far below them in the darkness. The dirt path, soft beneath her sneakers, led up higher along the cliff. Tony reached back his hand and she took it. It's a little scary up here, don't you think? She asked. He didn't say anything. She caught up with him and went a few steps ahead, still holding onto his hand. Look, we're right on the edge of the cliff, she said, suddenly alarmed. They should put a railing or something here. He didn't say anything. He was standing behind her. He reached both arms around her shoulders and, holding her tightly, guided her right up to the edge of the cliff. Chapter 18. Monday night. I'll just get it over with, he thought. It would only take a second. One hard push and over she'd go. Simple and quick. So why was he hesitating? She was so trusting. She seemed so comfortable with his arms around her like that. She didn't even question him when he refused to lend her his leather jacket. Maybe she didn't know anything after all. Maybe he was going to commit a murder he didn't have to commit. He decided to find out. Tell me about Brian, he said softly into her ear, leading her away from the cliff edge and a few feet onto the path. He was so strange, Meg said, shivering. I didn't really understand him. What did he say? Tony asked, allowing a little impatience to enter his voice. He said he was warning me, but it sounded like a threat. Warning you about what? I don't know. He just said to be careful. He said things weren't what they seemed. He wasn't making any sense. He seemed really frightened. He told me I was in danger. From who? From the guy who's been trying to stop the party? He held on to her tightly. If he had to, he could shove her over the edge from here. She'd probably be too surprised to struggle. I don't know. He wouldn't say. So Brian didn't crack entirely, Tony realized. He wanted to. Brian wanted to tell her it was me, but he was too scared. Has she figured it out? No. I thought maybe you could tell me what he meant, Meg said, leaning back against him. So trustful, he thought. I don't know, he told her. What else did Brian say? He had to push her. He decided he had to push her. Even though she hadn't figured it out, she would sooner or later, and his life would be ruined. She was leaning back against him, one hard shove. That's all it would take, and he wouldn't have to worry about her anyway. Brian said I was in danger, that's all. He told me to be careful. Who did he mean? He asked innocently. Who was he warning you about? Get ready. This is it. Push her and then run. Don't stand there listening to her scream. Don't wait to hear the splash, the sound of her body cracking as it hits the shallow riverbed. Just run, Tony. You'll be okay. You'll be fine. I think he meant himself, she said uncertainly. I was so confused. I think he was trying to warn me about him, but how can that be? Again he hesitated. I don't know. Brian's such a weirdo, he said. But how could it be Brian, she asked. That night in the woods, it couldn't have been Brian who grabbed me and made me fall down the ravine. Brian had already fallen into the ravine. Is she going to put one and one together and realize that I was the only one who could have grabbed her? Tony wondered. Then who could it have been? He asked, preparing himself, steadying his legs, closing his eyes. He didn't really want to watch her when she went over. Do you think there could be two people trying to stop the party? She asked. Brian and someone else? She turned around to face him. No, don't turn around. Don't make it harder for me. Don't look at me now. She has such a cute face, like a doll, so perfect, so pretty. Don't weaken, Tony. Of course you care about her, but you care more about keeping free, keeping alive, keeping your secret. Forever. Brian and someone else? I don't know. His voice trembled. He wondered if she could see how upset he was. Please turn around. Please, don't look into my eyes so lovingly. Tony, you weren't involved in it, were you? Meg asked suddenly. What? Tony's whole body shuddered violently. She pressed her forehead against his cheek. I had this strange, dumb thought that Brian might mean you. It's so strange, the crazy things that can go through your mind when you're upset and trying to figure things out. Yes, strange, he said. No, he couldn't mean me. No way. She was figuring it out. Feeling her forehead against his cheek, he could almost hear her brain working, solving the mystery. Could she tell he was lying? Had she already figured out he was Evan's killer? She pulled away. I love the sound of the river flowing down there. It's soothing somehow. Maybe you'd like to listen to a close-up, he thought. Her voice was changing, becoming colder, becoming more suspicious. Or was he imagining that? I'll tell you something else kind of strange, she said. Ellen went to see Brian. He was the first person she visited. Don't you think that's odd? Tony let out a short gasp. Ellen? She what? He was too upset to control himself, to hide his unhappiness at this news. He grabbed her arms, he braced his legs, he took a deep breath. What's wrong, Tony? She asked softly. Nothing. One hard shove. That's all it would take. She probably wouldn't even realize what was happening until she was halfway down. No, no, no. He wasn't going to do it. He knew he wasn't going to do it. I'm not a killer, he thought. I'm not a killer after all. Or was he? Could he do it? His mind spun. For a moment, he felt so dizzy, he thought he might plunge over the side. He steadied himself, holding on to Meg. What would be the point of killing Meg? She didn't know anything. She hadn't figured out anything. Killing Meg wouldn't help him in any way. Brian was the problem. Ellen was the problem. Brian and Ellen together were the problem. Meg was never the problem. Okay, you get to live, Meg, and you get to have your surprise party. He had tried to stop the party, and he had failed, but the party wasn't the problem. He had two problems, Brian and Ellen, Brian and Ellen, Brian and Ellen. I'll be at the party with them, he thought. I'll be there with my two problems. I'll be watching them. I'll be listening to them. He suddenly remembered the pistol his dad kept in the cabinet next to his workbench in the basement, and a box of shells next to it in the back of the shelf. The gun. I could bring the gun, just in case. Yes, I'll bring the gun Saturday night. For Brian and Ellen, for my own protection. Brian already tried to give me away. Who knows what he and Ellen were cooking up together, but I'll be ready for them. I'll be ready, willing, and eager. Tony, what's wrong? You just had the strangest look on your face. She peered up into his eyes, her face filled with concern. For the first time, he saw some suspicion there, too. Nothing. Guess I'm cold. Let's go back to the car. But aren't you going to kiss me first? Why was she looking into his eyes like that? For reassurance that he wasn't a murderer? Kiss you? Oh, yeah, right. He put his arms around her and kissed her, and thought about the gun waiting for him in the basement cabinet. Chapter 19. Saturday night. Meg pulled the car to the curb and looked up the hill to Ellen's Aunt Amy's house. A trail of tiny yellow lights went all the way up along the side of the flagstone steps to the front porch. I really don't feel like climbing those steps again, Meg thought. She honked the horn. No sign of Ellen up there. She honked it again, longer. Why do they put such tinny horns in these foreign cars? She asked herself. Success! Ellen appeared on the porch and signaled that she'd be down in a minute. Meg waved back to her, grateful she didn't have to get out of the car. She felt so nervous she wondered if she'd be able to enjoy a single moment of the party. I guess I'll feel it was worth it if it makes Ellen happy, she told herself. Meg, Shannon, and Lisa had worked all day, getting the Halsey Manor house in order, cleaning, decorating with balloons and flowers, and putting out the food and soda. I should be looking forward to the party, she thought, but I just know it's going to be dreadful. Ellen's going to hate it, and she's going to hate me forever. How could I have been so stupid? But Ellen's smile as she came trotting down the steps reassured Meg. Watching Ellen descend, Meg decided the party might work out after all. Ellen had always been a good sport about everything in the old days. She was sure Ellen would be a good sport tonight, and maybe she'd even be pleased that her friends wanted to make such a fuss over her. It was a cool and blustery night. The weather just couldn't make up its mind to stay summery. Ellen was wearing a straight red miniskirt over black tights, and a long-sleeved black top. She looked beautiful. I wish I were tall, Meg thought, putting on a smile as Ellen slipped into the car. Meg was wearing a turquoise pattern esprit sweater, her only expensive sweater, over purple pegged pants. Hi, where's Shannon? Oh, we're going to pick her up, Meg said, shifting into reverse so that she could back away from the curb. You look great. Thanks, so do you. You haven't changed a bit, Meg. You still look 10 years old. Is that supposed to be a compliment? Meg laughed. She headed west toward the old mill road, which would take them to Fierce Street. Where are we picking up Shannon? Ellen asked, scooting down in the seat and resting her knees on the dashboard. At her house? She had an apprehensive look on her face. She probably didn't want to go to Shannon's house, Meg decided. After all, it was Evan's house, too. No, we're picking her up at the Halsey Manor house. Meg tried her best to sound matter-of-fact about it, as if she picked Shannon up there every day of the week. What? That old mansion back in the woods? Ellen was very surprised. The Fierce Street woods? Meg nodded, keeping her eyes on the road. She knew she was a very bad liar. She hoped Ellen wouldn't start asking her a lot of questions. What's she doing there? Ellen asked, rolling down the window, deciding it was too cold and quickly rolling it back up. I don't know. She just asked me to pick her up there. Meg decided a simple I don't know would get her into less trouble than making up some kind of elaborate story. How's your aunt? Have you had a good visit? She asked, determined to change the subject. Ellen sighed and scooted even lower in the seat. Oh, I don't know, she said wistfully, watching the familiar houses pass by in the darkness. Maybe I shouldn't have come back. There are just so many memories. Oh, wonderful, Meg thought. I'm about to drag her into a mansion full of memories. She turned onto Fierce Street, driving quickly past the cemetery and the sprawling, run-down old houses across from it. The night seemed to grow blacker the moment she turned the corner and entered Fierce Street. For some reason, none of the streetlights were on, and most of the houses were completely dark. Meg saw Ellen shudder and close her eyes. They were driving past the Fierce Street woods. Oh, I hate this place, Ellen said. She opened her eyes. We're really taking the scenic route tonight, huh? I guess, Meg said. She didn't know what to say. Having the party at Shannon's would also have been a mistake. Let's face it, she told herself. Having it anywhere is a mistake. Ellen is just not over what happened here. Maybe she never will be, and she doesn't even want to pretend that she is. She turned down the narrow dirt road that twisted through the woods into the Halsey Manor house. She couldn't think of anything else to say to Ellen. She felt just as awkward as during their visit on Monday. And as the headlights revealed the massive stone mansion up ahead, a feeling of dread as big and heavy as the mansion came over her. Frankenstein's castle, Ellen said. I haven't been here in years. They used to have birthday parties here when we were little. Very gloomy birthday parties. Well, welcome to another very gloomy party, Meg thought. She had an impulse to turn around in a circular drive in front of the mansion and take Ellen right back to her aunt's house. Or maybe just keep driving through the night until there were no familiar houses, no familiar landmarks at all, and no memories. This isn't like you, Meg, she scolded herself. You always make the best of any situation. That's one of your finest qualities. This is going to be a great party once it gets going. Well, maybe not a great party, but an okay one, and Ellen will appreciate it. There's no way she won't appreciate it. She silently thanked herself for the pep talk and pulled the car up to the entrance to the old house. There were no other cars in sight. Everyone else had been instructed to park in back. 2 stone torches bearing flickering electric light bulbs, one much dimmer than the other, lit the doorway, which was arch-shaped and looked like a castle entrance. You go get her, Ellen said. This place gives me the creeps. Meg pulled the door handle and pushed open the door. No, come in with me. Don't make me go in there alone. Ellen frowned and pulled her legs off the dashboard. It gives you the creeps too, huh? What on earth can Shannon be doing in there? She climbed out of the car and smoothed down her miniskirt. Okay, come on, we'll go together. Meg felt so nervous she could barely walk. She'd never surprised anyone at a surprise party before. As she pushed open the heavy doorway and stepped into the front hall, she vowed she'd never do it again. After you, she told Ellen, motioning for Ellen to go in. Their sneakers squeaked over the dark marble floor. The house was silent. An enormous low chandelier, a confusion of brass and crystal, managed to dominate the room without providing much light. This way, I think, Meg said, pretending she didn't know where she was going. She led the way through the wide front chamber and pulled open a heavy door at the back. The room behind the door seemed to be dark. In here, Meg said. Ellen reluctantly followed her in. Meg's legs felt shaky, and she realized she was breathing really fast. I've never been this nervous in my life, she thought. Please, please don't let this be a total disaster. Surprise! The lights came on, revealing dozens of grinning faces. Ellen stared at Meg, not understanding what was happening. Surprise! The cry was followed by cheers and laughter. Look at her, Shannon shouted from across the room. She really is surprised? Meg stared at Ellen, waiting for her to smile, a smile of recognition, of acceptance, of delight. But the smile didn't appear. Ellen looked absolutely horrified.